Gesher Chaim is 3 volumes. Usually volume and 2 are printed together. The first volume is halachas. The second volume is longer pieces, like longer topics or halachic topics that require more intense. And the third chelek really deals with the ideology or the thought behind the life after death. What does soul mean? What's survival of the soul? What's human life all about? Olam haba. Okay, so that's the third chelek. The third chelek has been translated. Okay, it's actually a very readable translation. Gesher Chaim, the Bridge of Life, and the first 2 chalakim have not been translated. But in the introduction to the third chelek, and it was translated, or it's the introduction, maybe the actual Gesher Chaim. Okay, the death of Rabbi Yechiel Michal Tukachinsky is described blow by blow, line by line, hour by hour, which is very rare. And of course the pathos here is he is the one who writes one of the primary books on death and dying, and he lives that in his own life. So I said if I could find my translator copy, we'd spend a few minutes looking at this, because I think it's very instructive when you look at the minhagim of death and dying. So this is, once again, this is from the Gesher Chaim. Okay. Right. It's not that long. Okay. So
3 pages.
3 pages, right? And it's 3 pages translated into English. And English is always longer than Hebrew. So this is written by his son in the Hakdama to the second edition of the Gesher Chaim, after Rabbi Yechiel Michal Tukachinsky had passed away, obviously. So he writes, of course, this page 12, that his father had lived the life and lived his death in the way exactly he would carry it out. And if you go to bottom of page 12, for a number of months he had been confined to bed. He had severe and frequent attacks of pain.
It starts this last day. Is that where it starts?
His last day. Right? His last day.
That's
right?
where it starts. Okay.
This is, in other words, you have a long hakdama about the book itself, which the son writes. Then he writes the afterwards, which I didn't copy, is his ethical will. He writes, which the excerpts themselves are very long, and then he writes in the introduction about the book itself. Okay, but the key here is the actual last day. So this is really the last day. So he's suffering, obviously, for all these months. Life begins to start winding down. When racked with pain, he bore suffering in silence, obeying the advice of the prophet, hide for a moment until the anger will pass. The moment he got relief, what does he do? He opens up a sefer and, of course, begins to learn. And just when he has enough strength, then he would, and this gave him a shield from all the sufferings that he really had. So, as much as he is suffering, he finds himself a recourse or a respite in terms of what his learning itself. This is the death of Rabbi Yechiel Michal Tukachinsky. So, and sleepless nights, he would not allow himself to remain in bed. It was a pay to waste time. He would instead rise. Even in the middle of the night, he can't sleep because he's in so much pain. He would study assiduously, or at least commit his chidushim to writing continually until he would finally fall asleep. This is his last illness. Visitors could hardly believe that they were in the presence of a desperately ill man, for his bed became his desk and his bookshelf, both at home and in hospital. So a man of great strength. Once he became aware that his end was near, his lips would whisper words of Torah. It became evident he was preparing inwardly in quiet spiritual concentration for the day to come. He asked his doctor not to give him sleep-inducing pain-killing injections, right, because that clouded his mind. He declared it was better for him to suffer pain as long as he could remain alert until the very last minute and leave this world in conscious thought and reflection. By the way, the latest studies that have come out about physician-assisted suicide, or what doctors like to call physician-assisted dying, they don't like that word suicide, show that these are not people who are basically depressed who want to commit suicide, who want to kill themselves and ask doctors. Actually, people who are strong-willed who want to control their destiny.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And there are studies coming out of Oregon, which has had a law for a long period of time, a reasonable period of time, of who these people actually are. So I mean, one of the ways and one of the recognitions is they want to be able to alert when they are able to terminate their life. the more that you give morphine and pain medications, the more the person lapses into less clear thinking and is unable to process things. So he wants to be in control. He wants to be in pain so he can be alert. Okay, here we are, the 6th of Nisan, Tuesday. People came to his home and gathered around his bed since signs of impending death had become evident on his face. This is page 13. Okay. He awakened, however, and asked why they had come. They could go home without any qualms, and so they left. The next day, okay, this is Wednesday, the 7th of Nisan, he expressed his regret at not being able to participate in the minyan shul. For if not now, when? He donned his talis and tefillin and recited shachris. Once he had finished, he asked that no doctors be admitted. He knows the end is coming. To my questioning his desire, he replied, "My child, the time has come. It's already 99%. There's no need for a doctor anymore." Nonetheless, that morning, his personal physician, Dr. Magero, was summoned to his bedside. At noon, we had Dr. Heinemann rushed in because, in our innocence, we believed there was some hope that his critical condition would pass. My father, however, paid no attention to the doctors and categorically refused any injection. Doctors admitted that he was right. Okay? Completely in possession of his faculties, having corrected the galleys of his last page on his work, Eretz Yisrael, he has a whole thing about laws of Eretz Yisrael. He handed them over, announcing happily, "I finished." So he's putting his house in order. He was interested to learn what was happening in certain quarters. I imparted some information on rabbinic matters. When a friend volunteered some important news of important items, worldliness, he says, "This does not interest me anymore." Wow. At noon, a minion of friends gathered in his home, and Rabbi Rachamkin led Mincha Gedola service. My father recited Kedusha responses nominated after the Brach and the Kaddish with intense kavanah. For the rest of the day, he lay in bed in peaceful contemplation. It was clearly evident his departure from this world was imminent. Several times he wanted us to sit him up in bed, but the doctor and the tzaddik Ravayan Levin explained that in his present serious condition this wasn't possible. Wow, so Ravayan Levin is there. At first he acquiesced, but afterwards he insisted that this be done. With the consent of Dr. Hyman, we raised him and lowered his feet to the ground. His lips whispered some prayer for a few minutes. Then he said, now I can lie down. When he told Dr. Hyman they no longer needed a doctor, I asked him, so what is there to do? And he answered, to pray. Dr. Heinemann suggests he recite Adon Allah. My father smiled. I know what to say. Okay? The day gave way to dusk. So there's a 7th Nisan and now the sun's going down. We realized that his life too was declining. His numbers downward. My friends and acquaintances, neighbors and relatives began assembling to be present at the moment of farewell and the departure of the soul. My father, however, lay relaxed in his bed thinking of the solemn hour. Understandably, it was difficult to sleep, but his lips kept uttering words of prayer and Torah. Several times he pointed to a chair at his bedside and said to me within hearing distance of those present, my master, Mori Varabi, my master and teacher of Shmuel Salat, my master and teacher of Shmuel. The bystanders were seized with trembling. You hear this, that they see things and they speak to people from the past. The sun was setting. My father asked me for a glass of water. To my question, he answered, full. I wanted to feed it to him by spoonfuls, since in his last days he could hardly swallow mouthfuls, but he made the effort, took the glass by both hands, asked for another pillow under his head. He recited the Shahakol Bracha, drank half, and then the second half to the astonishment of all present. Then he recited Bar Nefashos. Okay? Wow. Then he asked for water. He washed his hands, tied his belt, ready for the transition. The words of the prophet, prepare yourself to meet your God. Without any show of excitement, he said, my face to the west. I asked him whether his head should be faced towards the east, and he answered yes. So the bed was turned to have his head pointing to the east and his face looking westward. Okay. These are found in Halacha and Kabbalah, why they are. Okay. Okay.
I don't know. I thought
in today's modern society, it's very difficult to actually do this, especially if you're in a hospital bed.
I always thought, like in cemeteries, they always put the graves a certain way.
No, it's specifically east and west. I don't know why.
So when the Mashiach comes, they sit up.
Maybe.
When the Teresa Mason comes, they sit up. Like, I don't understand.
Okay, then he points to that. Then he ordered that the window be opened. He spoke until 6 o'clock in the evening. So this is still the sun is still. It's Nisan, so 6 o'clock is probably around sunset. The darkness of the night crept slowly over the sky. Silence fell upon the room. The electric lights were switched on. We all stood around his bed tremulously, waiting for what would happen. Suddenly he gave me his two hands and held mine while his lips uttered some words. Then he let go. When I wanted to touch him again, he would not let me. Okay? So he explains, the law forbids the touching of someone in the throes of death, because the concern is, if you touch someone while they're dying, you may hasten their death. Life is so tenuous that the moment you do anything to them, it's like a candle, the way Gemara says it, like a candle. You touch a candle that's flickering, what'll happen? You move it, it's going to go out. It's not strong.
It's the Jewish law, right? It's under the Jewish law.
It's a Jewish law, yeah. So here he is. He is the author of Gesher Chaim, the book on death and mourning, and he says, don't touch me. Then he straightened his arms and legs and began breathing heavily, the sign of expiring. Okay. At that time, he mentioned to us the terms to the right. Rav Aaron Parish mentioned them that more people were standing on the left side. He opened his eyes wide and noted that people were standing on both sides. He indicated by gesture that he should be turned to the right side since people were standing there too, so I turned him and sat near him. A few more minutes passed. We waited in silence, not knowing whether this was really the end and whether the time had come to commence the recital of Vidui. Even the experienced visitors, such as members of the Chevra Kadisha who had been present on similar occasions, were not sure. Then we stood by his bedside while he lay straight, his face radiant with a sublime nobility. Suddenly he pulled his hand slowly from under the blanket and began beating his chest without any sign of emotion. Vidui, he was saying, Hashamnu, Bagadnu, Achei. Having finished, he replaced his hand and continued mumbling silently. Confronted by the clear indication of expiry, he began to recite the appropriate verses. Those who stood by were contemplating the light of Hashem, the human soul that was going up before their eyes. This continued for about half an hour. Amazing. At 7 o'clock p.m. that Thursday, the eve of 8th of Nisan, my master, my father, my blah, 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 breathed out his soul in purity while uttering words of Torah. He experienced the transition in the presence of rabbis, Rosh Yeshiva teachers, Yeshiva person, neighbor, and our eyes witnessed the extinguishing of the pure lamp, and so forth and so on. Okay? He was 83 years old when he died. The people present stood around his bed in shocked wonder. This solemn occasion would remain indelibly ingrained in the mind of each of them. They had heard with their own eyes and seen with their own eyes the sublime level man can reach in his life, and offering up in his senses and thoughts the holiness of Hashem alone. Not only did he remain lucid and alert throughout, but he came to death so well prepared and in such clear control of his faculties that he was able to give instruction on halacha during his last hours in marvelous accord with what he himself had laid down in his Gesher HaChaim. That's a sefer. To live and to die in such a manner requires a daily Torah disciplined existence, a Torah total dedication to the fulfillment of mitzvot, and the assiduous study of Torah. To view that so clearly and motivated exclusively by the ideas of Torah, it is necessary to study night and day, to give of oneself, and it's the Olo Shel Torah. He would often repeat the name of the Zohar in Parshas Noach. What is death? To the shedding of one garment and donning another. To have carried this out as he did reflects the personal greatness of my master and teacher, the Gaon Tzaddik of Saint Blessed Memory's father, whose face was radiant and welcoming the Shekhinah, contemplating the message of the Lord, etc., 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 etc. Okay.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
So it's very rare to find an account like this, which then the son, right, obviously records it. It made sense. He probably spoke to other people around. This made an impression upon a number of people. You can just imagine as he records this, and you really have the case of where the person lives or dies with as he lived his life.
The Gesher HaChaim is in Hebrew, or
the Gesher HaChaim is in Hebrew. I said the third part of the Sefer, which is about the soul and the afterworld, has been translated to English, called Gesher HaChaim. Okay.
It's really used. I'm pretty sure everybody quotes it when they about halachas of Avelos.
Right. I said that. I said that before we walked in. It's one of the key halachic svarim that if you were reading halachas, you would look and follow. It's not an art scroll, right? It's actually a primary source, or it's a modern primary source of what are halachas, and he goes through them. So the only thing you have to keep in mind is he's Yerushalmi. And some of what he writes is Minhag Yerushalayim. Every place has different locales, different minhagim. If you go to a funeral in Eretz Yisrael, they talk about Minhag Yerushalayim. There's some very different things that they do, and
there's different minhagim depending on where you came from too. Jews of Poland do this. Jews of Hungary do this. Yeah. I know Rabbi Grisman. I've asked him several questions in the past. He looks up in Rav Zinner's book,
right?
And Rav Zinner
right,
has Nitya Gavriel.
No, Nitya Gavriel, yes.
And his sefer is, Jews of Hungary do this, Jews of Poland do this, etc.
Nitya Gavriel, by the way, is on HebrewBooks.org.
Is it the whole thing?
I don't know if all the volumes, tons of volumes are up there. So
as many volumes
there, because he has volumes on Avelos, and he has volumes on Shavuos and Sfira and Pesach and Shabbos and this and that, and each book is a book.
And he's very, very well accepted by
everybody.
Yeah. Better trust him everywhere. This passage about asking for water reminded me that I heard the story of the papira of Rebbe Chaim Mushka Schneerson, the Lubavitch Rebbe's wife. When she felt she was expiring, she asked for a glass of water. And she drank the glass, she made the bracha, drank the glass of water and expired. And someone said, her mother did exactly the same thing.
Who did?
The Chaimish, Rebbetzin Chaimish,
Her mother, yeah.
had done exactly, and the explanation was that the
Cool.
bracha acharona, Barein Nefashos, would be recited by Techias HaMetzim.
Wow. So she didn't make the bracha achrona?
No, she didn't. She expired before she made the bracha.
Wow. It's a reason to come back.
Long time, it's over the 72 minutes, isn't it?
Well, that's a question of the
No, it's not, because time just
I
stops.
thought I was going to say because Barein Nefashos says Lachos Bam Nefesh Kachai. I thought that's why maybe. And the Barein Nefashos actually refers to life and living. Okay. Anyways,
How did he knew he was going to die? How
he knew he was. How do people know they're going to die?
$1 million question.
How do people know they're going to die? I don't know the answer for that, but you hear these kinds of stories that people feel that the end is coming. How does Yaakov call his sons together? So what happens today? See, what happens today, for better or for worse, that we extend life. That's good. Right, but sometimes we're extending life where life would have not been extended, so they've gone beyond that limit. There are also medications that artificially keep things going.
Yeah, okay.
So all of this kind of confuses the natural system of the body to know when it's actually dying. And many times people lapse into unconsciousness at the very end, so they're not able to do this. But it's very rare to see a story where a person realizes that and he's obviously very, very intellectually strong, very strong-willed, and so even though he's dying and strength is ebbing, correct, he's still in control. It's not dementia. So he's clear till the end. And he doesn't want the pain medication. So that's what makes this a very powerful example because we're learning about being present when a person passes away. It's a very powerful example.
If he was on the pain medication, he wouldn't be able to make the bracha. He wouldn't know he might not know what's happening.
Correct. And also,
he would say vidu, all that everything.
And he was 83, I think it said. 83. Okay. So.
But sometimes the pain medication will give you a better chance to do more stuff.
So it depends. You have to know which medication to choose and how to give it. Correct.
Yeah.
But pain medication, as a rule, changes moods and also can be somewhat confusing. It reduces.
This is about 100 years ago, you say?
No, it's not 100 years ago.
When did he?
This is probably late 40s or 50s. The first edition. The first edition was published in was still alive, obviously. Let me tell you now. 40 something. Well, the second edition after he dies is 1960. Okay, the first edition is, let's see, when does he die? That's a good question. Oh, okay, 5 years have passed since my father died. That's how the introduction begins. 1955.
It's very rare for such an achron to be accorded such tremendous respect like Gesher Chaim is.
Well, he was a leading Rav in the generation. And
this is the same time that Shlomo Zalman Auerbach lived, right?
Yes, he was much younger then. This is 1955. Young Rav Shlomo Zalman. Rav Shlomo Zalman's first tshuva of renown, which was about electricity, is somewhere in the late third. No, he's a young Rav Shlomo Zalman writes about electricity in the late 30s. And where people didn't understand electricity, and they're writing electricity as there's fire running around in the wire, and you flip the switch, you're just letting the fire go through. The Aruch HaShulchan says it's like I think he writes it's mutar, because just by flipping the switch, you're just letting the fire go through. The fire's already there; it's just running around. You just have by making the switch, you're letting the fire from behind the wall go into the wall, right? And he writes. So
he was a contemporary then.
He was actually a much younger contemporary. He's a younger contemporary. So Rav Shlomo Zalman was probably, I don't know, 30 when he writes this tshuva. He's a very young person when he wrote the tshuva on electricity. Let's say that's 1940. So this is 20 years later. So he's 50. And he is 83. So there's a gap.
Generation gap.
Generation gap.
He held that the non-use of electricity on Shabbos was a minhag, right? Is that what he concluded, Reb Shlomo Zalman?
No, I believe he wrote it's either I believe he wrote it's either not the non-use of it.
Yeah, why we shouldn't use it on Shabbos.
Why you shouldn't turn it on?
Yeah.
You can use it.
Why we shouldn't turn it on?
I can't remember if he wrote it's really a malachim and a Torah, it's a malachim and a rabbanon. But the point of it being, what we know about electricity is not just simply releasing fire. You're changing things.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're changing.
Right. For example, with a light bulb, you may be creating the switch may be actually sparking, which may be the rabbanon in terms of actually Aish.
But you're actually changing the state of the element,
correct,
the filament in the
right.
bulb.
So what happens? No, what happens if it's not a filament? What happens if it's a motor? So I mean, there's a whole machlokas really what electricity. Actually, motors have sparking all the time. Rotors have sparks. But there are things that electricity can do that is not necessarily going to be sparking. So that becomes a little more complicated. It's a very big machlokas what electricity is.
Okay. I thought it was Reb Shlomo. It may have been one of the other Gedolim who said, look, it's pointless debating exactly which malacha it is, because everyone agrees that you can't use it you can't turn it on Shabbos, and everyone accepts that. So it's reached the status of being a minhag Yisrael, not to turn. It may have been Reb Shlomo Zalman, maybe someone else, but I know such as far.
It may have been part. He wrote a very very long piece. I think it was called Morei Oish. It was a very long piece. Maybe that was part of it. Okay. Anyways, we're not turning on electricity, guys. Sorry. Okay. It's a different story. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So who else was in Yerushalayim at that time? Rav Vosner?
I guess so. I don't know.
So this is in Yerushalayim?
This is in Yerushalayim. Yes. Right. I think, for example, Rabbi Chim Michal Tukatsinski has like a shita. If I remember correctly, Shushan Purim. How far is Yerushalayim? How far does Yerushalayim go? So if I remember correctly, he says as far, I don't know if it's still there. Do you remember the old post office that there used to be, I think it's still there's a big post office?
Near Yaffo there?
The Yaffo.
Yeah. The main post office.
The main post office.
Government buildings, that area.
Right. That's as far as you could see, because you have to see, you have to see where Yerushalayim was. Now, we all assume that Yerushalayim is Yerushalayim. It keeps growing and growing. The metropolis Yerushalayim. Yeah. But he believed that actually, that was as far as you could, Bekoshi, if buildings hadn't been in the way, you could actually see Har HaBayis, or see where the base of Mikdash was, or see the old city of Yerushalayim maybe. And beyond that, Purim was like everybody else.
Oh, wow.
So he had some unusual ideas. I'm saying we don't always follow. Every posek has unusual shitos. Doesn't mean you follow it. But he was a tremendous gadol and wrote extensively and paskined extensively and was well respected and lived in the state of Israel matured into becoming a state. So, all right. Anyways, a little bit of excursus from all this, all the things we're going to do. All right, so we're on Chav Hey Amud Aleph, and we're on the bottom of the page. Okay, I believe on the bottom of the page, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, we haven't turned over yet. Good. So 3 lines from the bottom. So we had last time discussed this long story about the burial of Rav Hamnuna? Was Rav Huna? We had first the burial of Rav Hamnuna, and then we had the burial of Rav Huna, and where they buried Rav Huna next to Rav Chia. And Rav, who took him into the grave, and there were 2 sons next to Rav Chia, and one had to get up to make a place for Rav Huna to lie next to Rav Chia, because they're both Talmidei Chachamim, and he had to pick up the orange because the things started moving around. So that was how the story really ended. We saw, by the way, how important it was that they would bring people back to Eretz Yisrael for Kfura, which was not so simple from Bavel. Bavel to Eretz Yisrael was a bit of a journey. Okay.
And are they using ossuaries at this time?
Probably. So that's
like
bone boxes. Yeah. So that's what it is. Probably they're still using what we find today with using by Chini.
So if that's the case, don't they bury them and then a year later get the bones?
Correct. Yeah. Correct. So where are the bones lying? So they're lying on some kind of shelf. Look, the story about who's lying next to whom and the people moving over to make room for them, that's very difficult to understand and accept. in a literal format. But the fact that they would bring someone come from Eretz Yisrael and they bury him in a crypt next to someone else, it makes a lot of sense, especially if you're dealing with bone boxes. Right? It's easy to move a person over and make a little more room. You can't dig them up, right?
They're in bones for sure.
Right. The bones are desiccated. They're just all together.
Don't you want it so you don't mix up the bones? So you know which person?
Correct. But I'm saying, but it's easy to adjust the location.
I mean, give a little space.
Yeah, correct.
Maybe.
You want to move another neighborhood. You know, it's like
okay.
like parking the car. You just.
I know, but you don't want to mix them up, I guess.
Of course, you don't want to mix them up. Correct. But I'm saying, it's more complicated. It's more complicated as we do later on in history, which we do today, which is burial. It's extremely complicated. Because if you ever have to exhume, and it's rare that halacha allows that, if you have to move a body, you need to take the dirt all the way around it.
With it?
Yeah. Of course you have to take the... If the coffin is intact, then the coffin's the coffin.
Okay.
Usually the coffin breaks down.
Yeah, okay.
So if the coffin is broken down, you need to take, I forget how much on each side to transfer the body.
Have you ever ruled that an exhumation...
Have I ever ruled? I've never been present for one. I don't know if I ever ruled on it. The cases of ruling to allow a person to be taken out, Eretz Yisrael is one example. Another case is if it's not safe to keep the body there. There could be, for example, an abandoned cemetery, or a cemetery is being destroyed because of renovations or highways, which doesn't happen so much in this country. Happened in Europe. Right, or the other case.
In Israel, when they try to do excavations for the
those are actually very old. I'm talking about modern bodies, modern graves. The third place where it's permissible is if it's a family plot, and there's someone already buried there. You can't say I'll make a family plot and will now transfer it. It's a family plot and mishpacha is there. And you want to move him to Kever Avos. Kever Avos, you see, there's a very strong. You look at the whole idea of Mars Machpelah, of Kever Avos stands out as a primary thing. So bring him back there to Yisrael. You see, stands back. Yaakov is brought back. Correct.
Yeah. Sure.
All the Avos are buried in the family plot, and the idea of safety, of maintaining the integrity of the cemetery is just common sense. So those are the cases where it can be where a person can be exhumed. There's a very famous case about. I don't know how famous it was, when Lord Rothschild, I believe it was one of the Lord Rothschilds, was buried in France, quite sure. And eventually when Eretz Yisrael was created, the family, or maybe he had left the command, and they actually transferred the body to Eretz Yisrael. And I forget who it was. It must have been like Charles de Gaulle, one of those people says, look, I really thought this guy was a Frenchman. Now he's not a Frenchman, he's a Jew, you know. Well, because a Frenchman, France is the holiest place in the world.
Yeah, but in France, after 99 years, you can dig up the grave or something like that. The graves are open for 99 years.
Okay.
That whole thing, the whole thing, that whole fight because some families, grandparents.
I don't remember where he's buried. Right?
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. There's the place that almost became Har Herzl. At Hebrew University, most people don't know this. At Hebrew University, it's really behind the buildings. They discovered one of these graves from the Second Temple, and when the founders of Israel wanted to create continuity, it was very important to try to build connections to the past, especially biblical past, right? And not necessarily religiously, but historically. So they found these caves. I don't know if they ever found anything in there, but they initially had planned this to be the cemetery for the Gedolei HaUmah, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So the fact what really stopped it was the fact that it became very difficult to get Hebrew University after the War of Independence. It was cut off. But really you couldn't get there. But they had this idea. There were. In fact, I'll tell you who's there. Menachem Usiskin is buried there, and someone else. Nordal maybe. There are two people buried in what was an abortive attempt to create a national cemetery, so to speak.
For the Besser mentioned.
Right, for the honored people. And that of course didn't happen. Of course they moved to Har Herzl. So, but there is something over there on Hebrew U. It's actually, they have like a garden around it now. They've made it like a botanical garden. It's very, very nice, but you need to know the end.
How much soil do you have to take with it? A lot? Or
I don't recall. Look it up in the Gesher Chaim.
Okay. I'll Google it. I'll find it.
I don't remember either, but you have to. But once again, the concern is that the body has begun to spread. Right, the body deteriorates. I mean, let's keep in mind the body is breaking down.
Correct.
And the fact that there is a wooden coffin collapses eventually.
Yeah.
Right, splinters. Correct.
Yeah.
That's why.
The wood rots out.
The wood rots out. That's why you see in cemeteries, you see that there's a depression, right? That's why the schmancy, not so religious cemeteries talk about vaults. That's the logic of a vault. The vault is this concrete liner. The reason they want that is because that concrete doesn't move. So the coffin can break down, but the concrete vault is never going to break down. The problem is, it's concrete. The fact that it doesn't break down is exactly what you don't want to happen in a cemetery. It's a whole machlokas about vaults. There are cemeteries that have vaults because of water problems. That may be a heter. The concrete vaults. Remember, concrete is made of sand and dirt. So it's made of the same thing, but it's processed to be rock hard. So,
but in Eretz Yisrael, the graves are like on top of the ground in concrete.
They're in like parking garages.
The ones in the mountains or something.
The ones in
I just happened to be this year in a cemetery in Beersheba.
Yeah, I know. I've never seen it. I've seen pictures of it.
It's in the mountain, like on the side.
It's like built up. It's like built up like an apartment house.
It's very odd. It's very odd.
The bodies are inside there.
Think of a parking garage.
They have that here with the Goy cemeteries. I think they put the. I think you just put the.
No. In the Goyish cemetery, they have mausoleums and they have vaults. This is very different. This is, and once again, I've only seen pictures. This is like, it looks like a parking garage. It looks like different levels, and in between the levels, they have a level where you can walk, and then they put dirt and bury more people. Then they have a level on top. Think of a parking garage, and between each level is dirt. And it's all anchored together by concrete, so it doesn't move. And the dirt itself is connected inevitably to the ground, and that's what it is. For the life of me, I cannot understand this.
It's really odd to see this.
It's not only odd, I can't imagine that one day this is not all going to come down in Israeli construction. I mean, we're dealing with tons and tons of dirt and retaining walls.
The concrete is the concrete arrest or the rebar arrest.
So, correct. Whatever it is, that's what they're doing that because they have no space. They're at a place where they're going to put people. People, this is a very small country. So, if you don't want that, you have to pay a premium. Part of living in Israel, part of your national insurance is you get free graves.
Right.
Free burial, free graves. Oh, maybe not free burial. Probably services you have to pay for, but you have free karka. Yeah. But you will get one of these elevator kinds of things.
But I thought Yerushalayim, someone told me the mountain, they have like...
And in the mountain, on the side of the mountain, they bury in the mountain itself. So you can't even visit the grave.
You visit from far, you with binoculars.
No, you can't visit the grave because you're on top of the mountain and the bodies are going down.
Oh, it's not like a bottom, there's no bottom.
Right. Think of being at the edge of the cliff and the bodies are being buried down the thing.
Is that how it goes up from the bottom up?
It's all over, it's like wild.
The top down and the bottom up.
What about the Matseva idea?
What about the Matseva?
You're supposed to have Matseva, right?
Supposed to have Matseva so that the Kohanim don't trip on them, don't fall in the wrong place.
Isn't it the idea you have this person's name? Or
No, it's much later. That's actually much later.
So how about the people supposed to visit the grave on the yurt site or something?
So visit the grave on the yurt site. You don't
know where it is.
So that's what that. Well, they used.
There's no identification.
So there's the stones that are there.
Whitewash. Remember
the stones are there.
Right. We learned that. We learned that right at the beginning. The whitewash.
Right. Society used to be a lot smaller. People didn't have to remember phone numbers. Didn't have to remember email addresses. Didn't have to remember which aisle to go down Sobeys to find food. They remembered where the burial was, and it was all around. Wasn't necessarily one place. So
Israel's filled with graves.
Yeah, it really is.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Correct. Okay, and going up to Har Zeitim is actually very difficult. It's very, very dangerous.
And for a Kohen, it's
because you have to go up through the Arab villages.
Why? Because there's bodies everywhere?
No, because getting there, you're surrounded by angry Arabs when you have to travel up small, narrow streets.
Okay.
And they throw stones at people going up there all the time.
Now there, it's also, I don't know if it's the same one, but one of the places they're when you're there at the grave, they're throwing at you. Never mind getting there. When you're there, they're.
So I'll just say one more story, then we'll get to the Gemara. I'm sorry. Many years ago, this is when I was in Brantford still. So someone asked me to go out to the cemetery to it must have been Chodesh Elul, right, make a molly for people. I took it, so I went out with them, and I came. Then they said, "Oh, there's one more grave we want to go to." I went to the grave, and on top of the grave, there's a usual stone. On the top of the grave, there's this long stone like they have in Eretz Yisrael, right? In Eretz Yisrael, they put the stones down flat.
On front.
There's a headstone usually, but then there's a flat stone on top
over the grave.
Yeah. And on this stone was inscribed the entire Kel Moli with the person's name. Okay.
Wow.
I said, what is this? And they said, when a person passed away, he wanted to make sure that when people would visit his grave, they'd remember what to say. They would never pass his grave without saying the mole. So he had built into the will of the Yerusha that this was there. So I said, and it wasn't a new story. I said, so what happened? I said, by now the children, the grandchildren can't read Hebrew, so it doesn't help them. So. Okay.
At least they're coming to the grave.
This wasn't even children. This was mishpacha who were coming to their parents, who said, "Let's go visit whoever it is." Well, I think it was some relative. Okay. Kinoch nafshi Rav Chisda. When Rav Chisda died, so we had this before with Rav Huna. Savar l'asuvi sefer Torah poraya. They thought to put a sefer Torah on his bed or his bier. The poraya means bed. From Pruruvu, it means sometimes a couch that people sat on. In this case, it means the gurney or stretcher that they took the brownie out on. So Amar lahu Rav Yitzchak. So Rav Yitzchak says, Milsa the Rabbi Losrile Anan Nekem V'Navid Lei. So this is Rav Chisda, who is the student of, or the younger contemporary of Rav Huna. He's younger than Rav Huna. He studies Rav Huna. Rav Huna, they had the same story, and they said Rav Huna we were not going to do it because Rav Huna didn't want to sit on a bed that the Sefer Torah was. He took a jug and he turned the jug upside down and put the jug, Sefer Torah on the jug, and he sat on the bed. So that's what we're not going to do with Rav Huna. So the same story came up with Rav Chisda. They said, there's no story about him with a Sefer Torah being taken off the bed, but his teacher didn't do it. We're going to do it for the student. Okay. So and the story continues. We don't have the whole kvura here like before. Savalo l'mishla karaihu. So they rip kriya. We saw before that when a rebbe dies, the talmidim rip kriya. So they thought they were not going to sew up the kriya that they did for Rav Chisda. So Amalahu Rav Yitzchak Bar Ami. So Rav Yitzchak Bar Ami responded, as his chacham came and shechsiu pnei mechore hamita sholim. So when you can actually, it's not like an Avel who can't sew it up during Shiva or Shloshim, but the moment you turn away from the Kvura, that's already the end of your, so to speak, Avelis. You're sad, you're mourning, but you're going to get on with your life. So the moment you turn away, you can actually sew the garment up. Okay. So that
after the 7 days.
No, this is about students, Talmidim, who ripped Kriya for the death of their Rebbe.
Yeah.
So they all there. You can just imagine the whole yeshiva is there with ripped garments. They thought they ripped it and that's it. They can never sew it up. Like for a parent, you can't sew it up. So a parent is a parent for Olam Hazeh. Rebbe's for Olam Haba. And he said, no, the moment you turn away from the cemetery, you got to get on with your life. You can actually sew it up.
So this appears to be halacha l'maisa. The halacha.
Yes. Kinoch nafshi the Rav Bar Hafuna of Rav Hamnuna. When Rav Hafuna and Rav Hamnuna died, Asikna lahasam, they came. There's two people dying here at the same time. It's a double funeral, or it's a double transport, that they're transporting the two bodies to Eretz Yisrael at the same time. So askinhu lahasam, they came to there from Bavli. This is Talmud Bavli. Where's there? Eretz Yisrael. So they come to Eretz Yisrael. Kimatu Agishra, they came to travel a narrow bridge, and until now the two donkeys were traveling together. Maybe it was two camels. Okay, so they were traveling parallel. Now they were actually camels. So Kamu Gamli, so the camels stopped. They couldn't move. So Amalu Ahutaya, so this Arab comes along, and the Arab says, "My hi, what's going on here? Why are these two camels not moving? It's very unusual. They both seem to be loaded, look like healthy camels, and suddenly they stopped. So and you don't know what they're carrying. So Amrulei Rabbanan, Amrulei, they said to him, Rabbanan the Kav the Yikra Dadi. The two rabbis are giving cover to each other. The camel is being controlled by the body that it's carrying, and each body is telling its camel to hold off, to let the other one go first on the bridge. Bridges were extremely narrow. Okay, they were single file at best. Right, so, right.
Probably, yeah.
So, for example, there, we talk about din and pshara. Pshara is compromise. So not every pshara we usually think is like compromise is 50-50. Instead of do I owe you $200? Well, I don't know. So pshara would be I'll pay you 100 and you lose 100. Sometimes pshara means trying to find ways that are not necessarily compromise. One of the examples is what happens. You have two camels or two people coming to a bridge, and who goes first? It's not really din, right? There's no din. You got to work it out. And let's say they're obstinate, they can't work it out, that's when you call someone to give a pshara. So here's the case where they're both going the same way and they can't go. So the Taya says what's going on. They said the rabbis are giving cover to each other. So Mar Amar, Mar Neil Beresha, one rabbi is saying, you sir, the other rabbi, you go first. Mar Amar, and the other rabbi says, Mar Neil Beresha, you sir should go first. So the Taya is the Arab, so he goes to look what are the examples, what are the cases going on, and he learns that it's Rabba Bar Rav Huna, and the other one is Rav Hamnuna. So Rabba Bar Rav Huna was Rabba Bar Rav Huna was a Talmud Chacham. So he felt that Rabba Bar Rav Huna should go first, because Talmud Chacham ben Talmud Chacham should have precedent over a Talmud Chacham whose father was not a Talmud Chacham. So this is what the Arab says. He kind of stips himself into the situation.
The Arab came up with this?
The Arab comes up with
That's
it, right?
Unusual, isn't it?
Well, you'll see that, first of all, there's great respect for Arabs all along. They have great, sage wisdom.
Seems to know more than the good ones.
Well, you'll see in a moment, okay? Let's finish the story. Okay, so actually the Gemara does not explain why he said. So he says Amar. He says Dina Hu the Rab Bar Huna Neil Beresha. First Rab Bar Huna should go. So the Gemara doesn't explain why, but the Rishonim explain because he's a Talmud Chacham ben Talmud Chacham. So sure enough, the moment he says that Chalaf Gamle the Rab Bar Huna, the moment that the Taya says this, the camel begins to go. The camel listens. And he starts to move first, and sure enough, the camel Rav Huna goes. So what happens? Nasar Bache V'Shine de Utaya. The molars and the teeth of the Arab fell out. Okay, in other words, maybe it was not his job to give advice, or maybe a Talmud Chacham ben Talmud Chacham is not better than another Talmud Chacham, or maybe he was slighting the other Talmud Chacham. It can really be true that a Talmud Chacham ben Talmud Chacham maybe is greater, but you have to be sensitive. So he was. What happens to him? All his teeth fall out, so to speak. Okay, one of these fanciful stories, but it doesn't necessarily mean that his teeth fell out at that very moment. It can be subsequent to that. If you read these stories, they sound like, well, there's a nace going on. Suddenly, all his teeth pop out.
Maybe a week later, a month later.
Well, could be, right. Could be as they told the story and they say, oh, and you remember what happened to this Arab? We knew this Arab. And sure enough, as he progressed in life, he had no teeth. What happened to his teeth? Oh, why is this guy toothless? Because once upon a time the story happened to him. Okay? So at any rate, they connect. The stories sometimes make connections. But at any rate, this becomes it's not really important halacha here. It's more of just letting us know that they bring, once again, people from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael for burial. You see, what
it does say is that the son of a Talmud Chacham takes precedence.
Yes, correct. Yes, yeah.
It's the wrong thing. That's not the right thing. It's saying that is not the case, Archie. It's saying that yichus is the important decider.
He's saying here.
Not yichus. It's not about yichus. It's about learning. It's about an aggregate amount of learning.
Right.
So don't view this as yichus. View this as the fact that a Talmud Chacham who was raised in the house of Talmidei Chachamim may have an edge upon scholarship and upon learning, only by virtue of having been exposed to more. Okay. That's how I interpret it. Or the fact that there's the generation after generation makes the connection stronger. And as opposed to a neophyte in learning has to really establish himself still.
Since we're going to talk about Espedim next, can I ask a quick question about Espedim?
Yes. You must tell the truth.
Yesterday, I believe, not yesterday, yes, yesterday, Sunday, I guess, was Pesach Sheni.
Correct.
No Espedim on Pesach Sheni? Or yes, Espedim?
I think not. Every time we don't say Tachnun, it's usually no Espedim. Three things go together, tend to go together. Tachnun, Kel Moles, and Espedim. Or either come together or don't come together.
And so, but everybody says something anyway, right?
So the answer is because you will see first of all that these Espedim are not the Espedim we give. The Espedim that they read or that they recite, first of all, they need professional maspidim. You'll see Rav Ashi turns to the professional eulogizers, says, "What are you going to say about me when I go?" Oh, I'd like to have the short version now. Let's see with the note, right? Okay, and that's we may get to the story right now. And more importantly, the way they speak is in rhyme, not rhyme, in poetry. And these things are meant to create. Yes, the reverse of Bat Chanim, but it's meant to create a sense of sadness, but with the way they're speaking. Think of listening to Eicha. Eicha is the dirge, is the eulogy about Eretz Yisrael and Yerushalayim. Okay. Now it's not written in straight lines.
Right.
Bachot Tivkeh Balayla.
Right.
So that's how you have to. That's why these eulogies, you'll see, they're like wild. For us, we read them. We say it's like reading, I don't know, strange English poetry, except it's in Hebrew or Aramaic. But for these people, this is what they were exposed to, and there was a whole sense of encouraging emotions. We don't encourage emotions. People break down because they're passionate and they're emotional. But by and large, you go to a funeral home, you sit back, and you hear about the guy, or the woman, or hear about the person. Right? And it's important to give cover to the niftar. It's also important to appreciate their life. Espedim here are very different. So that's why many times people say, we're not giving a hesp, we want to talk about the guy a little bit. Okay? Nothing wrong with talking about the guy.
So you're saying they didn't do so much about the person's life then? Is that what you're saying?
They tried to evoke emotions. They tried very hard to evoke emotions about the loss that took place. Less about trying to make you aware of all the good they did. But for you to appreciate that suddenly a real loss has happened. And the moment that you heard that, you began to contemplate and you realized that was it. This finale, that you can't go back. Life is only so far. It impacts upon you because one day we will not be here, etc., etc. Okay. All right. So once again, as I said before, these are very difficult to go through in terms of trying to understand them. Okay. So, Hahu Yenuka. I'm sorry. Skip the line. Pasach Alehu Yenuka. So this child begins to start giving the eulogy over the death of either, I guess, Rabbi Bar Hafuna probably, or right. Geza Yeshishim Olami Bavel. The how do you translate? The offspring of Yeshishim of.
A disciple of sages has descended from Babel.
So Geza is like a branch coming off of, and Yeshish is an old sage. Yeshish is old, comes from Babel. The Imo Sefer Melchamos, and he has brought with him Sefer Melchamos is the book of wars, but it refers to Sefer Melchamos Hashem, refers to the Torah. He's come with the Torah, and the Torah use the term Sefer Melchamos Hashem. So Hashem's book is called the Sefer Melchamos. Rashi says it also could mean that Rabbi Bar Rav Huna used to argue back and forth, right? And they battled back and forth in learning, and you see that was actually what's going on at the bridge as well. So there's all kinds of interpretations of Sefer Melchamos. Now, Kav Kapod Huchbalo Liros Beshod Veshever. So Rashi says Kod v'Kipod. There's a klola. These are two kinds of, I think they're a type of bird that live in a faraway place, and both these bad birds that come from faraway places, which live all alone, they're like desert birds, have come together, and they've come to see the Shod v'Shever, to see the destruction of the world. That God is angry at the world. Why is God angry at the world? Because this guy's no longer here. This person who represented the pinnacle and apex of Torah, which Torah defends the Jewish people, So the fact that he has been taken away from us is an indication of the displeasure of the Almighty. Okay.
One would assume that this Sefer Torah is Shemus, by the way, right?
Which Sefer Torah?
That he was going to be buried with.
No, they weren't going to bury the Sefer Torah. They wanted to put the Sefer Torah on top of his body. They weren't going to bury the Sefer Torah. It means that they were going to parade him with the Sefer Torah on the same stretcher.
Oh.
That's what it meant.
Oh.
And because a similar case came up with the previous story where they said, they see the Torah, this guy was the Torah, this guy in the Torah is the same thing. Like putting a badge, right?
So in other words, you're not going to bury the Sefer.
No. But still, the question, can you put a Sefer Torah on top of a person? It's still disrespectful.
No, a dead person.
Dead person or live person, okay? Still a person.
You're talking about, what was it? You're talking about before he's buried?
Yeah, on the way. In other words, the procession will. Everybody recognizes the importance of a Sefer Torah. So you're going. So is this really enhancing the cover of the mace, or is it decreasing the cover of the Sefer Torah? And the answer is the latter. So the birds, the bad birds have come to see the destruction that's here. Haba mishinar, which the destruction. Haba mishinar katzav alalamo, the person who has come from Shinar, which is Babel. Katzav alalamo v'chamas mimenu nefashos. The God has brought anger against the world, and chamas mimenu, he's brought anger against the people. V'samach bahem kekala chadasha, and he has I guess v'samach bahem kekala chadasha. I'm not sure where the comma is here. Samach mikal chadasha rochev aravos. Oh, that the rochev aravos, the God who rides on high. This is like the scene of the chariot where God is riding on high, is celebrating with him like a chassan celebrates with a new kala. Okay, so God is with God, but we have nothing here. So, or maybe v'samech mikal chadash rochev aravos sas v'samech bevo olav nefesh naki v'tzadik. So there's celebration with God when a new tzaddik, a clean and righteous person's soul comes up to heaven. That's the gist of what this child is saying. This is not even a Talmid Chacham. This is a eulogizer in training. Yenuka doesn't mean a small child; it means a youngster.
This is really anthropomorphic, and it's
very much so. Yes.
And there's some real questions about saying this.
Well, ask no more. They said it. Okay. So at any rate, that's the end of the story. The epilogue of the story with the death of Rabba bar Afuna. This was the eulogy, the first eulogy that was said by the kid, by the youngster who opened up. He was the opening act. Before the big eulogies got up, he said this. So you see, the eulogies are very different than what we're used to seeing. Okay, now, Kinoach Nafshe the Ravina. When Ravina died, this is the Ravina Ravashi guy, Pasach Lehu Safdana. So the Maspe, the eulogizer, got up and said, Tmarim Hiniu Rosh. Tmarim are date. The date palms should wave their heads. Al tzaddik katamar, for like the tzaddik who is like the tamar. Tamar is the date palm, and date palm, I guess, was a symbol of being strong. Right? It had one very thick trunk. It was strong. It was united. So all you date palms will wave at the tzaddik who's passed away and passing us on his way to the grave, who is compared to tzaddik katama yefrach. Right. So. Nasim leilos kayamim, al mesim leilot kayamim. We're going to make our days like night, our nights like day. In other words, we're going to be sad even a day for the person who stayed up at night to study the Torah like he did in the day.
He's the guy who edited the Talmud. Who was
one of the final pieces of the Talmud, correct? Okay, so this is the death of Ravina. That's a fairly straightforward eulogy as they go, right? Once again, if someone got up to say that and you were sitting there, a guy gets up and says, palm trees you should wave at the tzaddik who's like tzaddik atam yifrach, and we're going to make their nights like day because the person made days like nights, you say, what's going on here? This is what the eulogies are. Okay? Now we have the story with the two eulogizers. The Rav Ashi wanted to have a taste of what we're going to say about him. Do we have time to do this? We'll see. Okay? Once again, I'll see if I can get through this quickly. Amalei Rav Ashi leBar Kipuk. So Rav Ashi said to Bar Kipuk. Bar Kipuk was one of the professional eulogizers. Hahu Yoma Mai Amrit. On that day, the day that I'm gone, that you got to get up and give my eulogy, what are you going to say? So Amalei, so Bar Kipuk says to Rav Ashi, Amina in Barazim Nafla Shaheves, Mayasu Ezovekir. If the fire has broken down, the cedar, the strong cedar has been burnt down broken by the fire, what will happen to the hyssops that's growing along the wall? In other words, if the cedar has fallen and been destroyed, what can happen to the little flowers? Which basically means, well, what have we lost? We've lost the great tzaddik here, and what are we? We're just leftovers. What good is that for us? And he gives another example. If the Leviathan has been caught by the hook, Leviathan, Leviathan, this humongous fish, if it has been reeled in and can't escape the fishermen, what are we going to say for the tiny fish, like the sardines, the herrings? Okay? Well, obviously, he's gone. What happens to us? What's left behind? If in a flowing, raging valley, which is full of raging waters, it has dried up, but dryness has come, what will happen to swamp water or stationary water? It's all the same analogy. Okay, so Amalei Bar Abin. So standing next to Bar Kipuk was the competition. This was the next door over, the next shingle. He said to him, Chas v'shalom. No, God forbid I would ever use this kind of analogy. The chika v'shal heves, but tzaddik that I would talk about hooks and I talk about fire, but in an analogy to tzaddikim. These are destructive things. You're going to use this to talk about tzaddikim? So Rav Ashi says, okay, wise guy, Uma Amra. So what would you say? I'm shopping around. I want to see who gives me the best eulogy. So he said, Amina would simply say, and it's a simple eulogy, let's cry and woe for the mourners and not for the lost object, because he's gone to rest. The aveda, the lost object, the person, Rav Ashi's gone to rest, and we are left behind for anacha, for sadness, and so to speak, and groaning. Okay, so Cholish Daite. So Rav Ashi was very upset when he heard these eulogies. Okay, now it's not clear what's so bad about these eulogies. Maybe he thought they should say more about him, or maybe he was. Rashi says he was upset that this one compared him to a fire, Shalevis, which is destructive. This one compared him to an aveda. Some say that this was in light of the fact that Ravina had died. He was comparing the eulogies they gave to Ravina to what these guys were going to say about him, and he thought that Ravina got a better shake. Okay, so both of them were tried out the eulogies, and Rav Ashi wasn't happy. So what's the end of the story? So Chosh Daitai Elihu. So Rav Ashi was very saddened by them. V'yizhafu kra'aihu and hahu yoma. And their souls turned upside down, so that their feet became inverted. Somehow, because Rav Ashi was sad, he put some kind of hex on them or something, or whatever, and as a result, their feet became twisted. And once again, this doesn't mean necessarily it happened right then. It means subsequently they developed some kind of bone illness or disease or skin, whatever it was, and their feet became mangled upside down. Very, very radically, people could tell. And that was one thing. You'll see the end of it. And Ahu Yoma Lo Asel Laspude. And that day, the day that Rav Ashi died, they didn't come to give the eulogy. It looks like either they were upset that they got punished, or Rav Ashi didn't want them. But people remember that these were the best guys in the book. These were the leading Maspidim, and they were not present at the eulogy of Rav Ashi, and that's when the story probably came to light of what happened. And the Gemara concludes, it says, V'hainu Diam Rav Ashi. This is what Rav Ashi said about these two people. These people knew, remember, there's an independent statement related to this. Lo bar kipuk chalitz, lo bar avin chalitz. That neither of these guys could give chalitza. None of these guys could give chalitza, were able to give chalitza to their sisters-in-laws, because the Gemara says in Masechet Yevamos that a person that can't stand on his properly can't give chalitza. It says v'cholza nalo me'al raglo. So she has to take the shoe off of his foot and not mitachas l'raglo. So he wears the shoe, she takes the shoe off, but if the foot's like this, she has to take the shoe off upside down, mitachas l'raglo. So a person who has twisted feet is disqualified from performing chalitza. That's a halacha in Masechet Yevamos. Okay. And these two great maspidim suddenly developed the same identical symptoms.